of getting. We're almost there. Probably not. I had a lot of stuff going on. My phone's not on. Is it? I knew this was going to be a bad day because my TV, when I turned it on this morning, it said, "I'm not working for you." So
I think I'm on now. All right. No, it's not up. Huh, I don't get this. I don't know why it's not showing up. It's showing that's my home page, but for whatever reason, it's just not showing that. You can take a look at that, see if you can't.
Here we go.
You are, oh, it was there for, hey, look at you. Yay.
What a guy.
All right. I don't know what he did, but it was a miracle. All right. It's so hard to go through this and pick out just what little there is, you know. I kept trying to say, all right, I need to do verse 9 through 12, and then 12 through 16, or you can't do that. There's just so much here. So anyway, we're going to start here in verse 1 of chapter 6, not Joshua, Judges 6. It says, "Then the children of Israel did evil in the sight of the Lord." And if you remember, let's see, let's do, now why isn't it advancing? What'd you do to my computer? Yeah, probably. I do have my mouse if we need it. It says, "Then and the children of Israel did evil in the sight of the Lord. So the Lord delivered them into the hand of Midian for 7 years." And you remember that little circle that he had up there where it said evil, and then worried about things, and then God helped them out, and then they'd get back, and they'd get back to evil again. And that's what I'm trying to get to here. Do we want to close that and maybe reopen it?
I think that would be great.
That's my answer for everything. Close it and reopen it.
That's a good idea, I think. Hey, everybody. All right, go to slideshow. And go to from the beginning.
There we go.
And
Yeah.
that's your presenting thing, and so that's what they should see.
Good.
Okay.
Look at him. There it is. Mine's a little different. I had to find it online, so mine's a little different. Israel rebels, God punishes Israel, Israel cries out, and you're going to see that's what happens here. So we're going to read down a little bit. "And the hand of Midian prevailed against Israel." This is verse 2. "Because the Midianites, the children of Israel, made for themselves dens and caves and strongholds that are in the mountains." They were hiding from the Midians. They would find anywhere they could go to hide. So they were scared of them. So it was whenever Israel had sown, Midian would come up, also the Amalekites, and that's the wrong, the Amalekites and the people of the east. Now I looked up who the Amalekites were, The Amalekites, they attacked Israel while they wandered in the desert. The Amalekites were kind of nomads. So let's look over at Exodus 17. Exodus 17, 8 to 14 says, now Amalek, now you'll find out a lot of these tribes that they have problems with, where do you think these tribes came from? Esau. Yeah, eventually, you got Jacob and Esau. A lot of these Amalekites were descendants of Esau. So it says, now Amalek came and fought with Israel in Rephidim. And Moses said to Joshua, choose from us men who go out and fight with Amalek. Tomorrow I will stand on top of the hill with the rod of God in my hand. So Joshua did as Moses said to him and fought with Amalek. And Moses and Aaron and Hur went up to the top of the hill. Now I think you all know this story. As long as he held up his hands, what happened with the Israelites? They were winning. But he was getting tired, so they got him a chair. And he sat down. But it's still getting tired, so they had to hold up his arms. But they ended up, by the end of the day, they did end up winning. It says, so Joshua defeated Amalek and the people with the edge of his sword. And one other time that they had a problem with them, Deuteronomy 25. Now this is just a memory of what happened. Deuteronomy 25, verse 17 and 18. It says, remember what Amalek did to you on the way as you were coming out of Egypt, how he met you on the way and attacked your rear ranks and all the stragglers at your rear, when you were tired and weary, and he did not fear God. So you have the Amalekites here. Israel really hates these people. They aren't a group of people that they like very much at all. But they did say that God did say, eventually you guys are going to remove them from the remembrance. And that did finally happen during the reign of Hezekiah. They finally completely wiped out the Amalekites. There were none left. So the Midianites and the Amalekites and the people of the east, I looked and looked. I couldn't find out who the people of the east were. The only thing I can figure is that they were, the Amalekites were nomads. The people from the east were also people that kind of hung out with them. So now we're down in verse 5. For they would come up with livestock in their tents, and as numerous as locusts. Both their camels were without number, and they would enter at the land and destroy it. So Israel was greatly impoverished because of the Midianites, and the children of Israel cried out to the Lord. There you go. God punishes Israel. Israel cries out. So the Lord sent a prophet. Now this is where he sends a prophet not to tell him this is what I'm going to do. He's telling them this is what I've done. This is what I've done, and you guys are messing up. You guys have done the wrong thing. But it says, and it came to pass when the children of Israel cried out to the Lord because of the Midianites, that the Lord sent a prophet to the children of Israel, who said to them, thus saith the Lord God of Israel, I brought you up out of Egypt and brought you out of the house of bondage. I delivered you out of the hand of the Egyptians and out of the hand of all those who oppress you, and drove them out before you and gave you their land. Also I said to you, I am the Lord your God. Do not fear the gods of the Amorites, in whose land you will dwell. His last sentence here, but you have not obeyed my voice. So he's chastising them. This is all I've done for you, but this is what you've done back to me. So then, now I'm gonna pose this out. Has anybody ever been in a class on who the angel of the Lord was? Yeah. I was in a class one time, a long time ago, that they said that the angel of the Lord was Jesus Christ. because you never see the angel of the Lord when Christ was alive. And I'm not sure I buy into that. I think there is once or twice that I've seen that, like at his birth. Now, my version says an angel of the Lord. So I don't know. It doesn't really say who the angel of the Lord is. Some people believe it was Gideon. I don't know. Now the angel of the Lord came and sat under a terebinth tree, which was in Ophrah. Let's see. I hope you guys like maps. Just real quick, I'm going to point out Midian is right here. Egypt is over here. Israel's up there. So Midian's way far south of where this is all going to happen.
That Midian just kept that name right. Exodus 18. Jethro, Moses' father-in-law, was a priest in Midian.
Yep.
And he was a really good man. So it's another.
Also, something else big happened with Midian. Does anybody know what that was? Midian is where Moses left Egypt and he went and picked up his 2 wives from the Midianites. So that's where he went, was Midian. Anyway, here in Israel, it's pretty far south on the map, is Ophrah. Remember the Valley of Jezreel, where that's going to be part of the story here. So the angel of the Lord appeared to him and said to him, "The Lord is with you, you mighty man of valor." Gideon said to him, "O my Lord, if the Lord is with us, why then has all this happened to us? And where are all his miracles, which our fathers told us about, saying, did not the Lord bring us out of Egypt? But the Lord has forsaken us and delivered us into the hand of the Midianites. The Lord has turned to him, and the Lord, I'm talking the angel of the Lord, turned to him and said, Go in this might of yours, and you shall save Israel from the hand of the Midianites. Have I not sent you?" So he said to him, "O my Lord, how can I save Israel? Indeed, my clan is the weakest," that's Manasseh. "My clan is the weakest in Manasseh, and I am the least of my father's house." Do you think that is he probably the youngest in his house? That's what I think. I don't think he was necessarily the weakest, but he was probably the youngest in the house. Rebecca? Who knows who the name of the 2 wives were?
Moses had a wife before who was the daughter of Jethro the Midian.
Well, you remember, he went down there and he said, "That's the wife I want." I didn't mean to point at your wife, sorry. "That's the wife I want." Now I need to point at a guy. Anyway, he went down to Midian. He said, "That's the wife I want." And what happened?
According to Google, Numbers 12:1 mentions Moses marrying a Cushite.
Okay. Hang on a second. I think I put it in my notes. Anyway,
My version says Ethiopia.
Ethiopia. I wish I had that. Well, I know Midian is where he went when he left Egypt.
Yeah, and it was Zipporah. He married Zipporah, who was the daughter of Jethro, who was the priest in Midian.
I'm not finding the note.
Sometimes this happens to me, and I'm
Just drive on.
not sure where to go. But yeah.
Yeah, it's in my notes somewhere here,
That's all right.
but
But I'm enjoying the story on Gideon. I think we should go back.
yeah. And the Lord said to him, "Surely I will be with you, and you shall defeat the Midianites as one man." And then he said to him, now, if I have found favor in your sight, then show me a sign that it is you who I talked to. So he goes and he says, okay, I'll wait here. And he wants him to go do an offering. So he does the offering. He brings back the offering, and the angel of the Lord picks up his rod, reaches out, and touches the rock. Well, he touches the food, the meat and the bread, the unleavened bread. He touches both of those, and the rock catches fire and consumes both. So I don't know how many times I've seen a rock catch fire, but not very often. So now verse 25, it says, now it came to pass in the night that the Lord said to him, take your father's bull, the second bull of 7 years old, and tear down the altar of Baal. Your father has, and cut down the wooden image that is beside it. Now, the wooden image, those are Asherahs. We've talked about those in previous classes. They have the altar here, and then next to it they have an Asherah. Sometimes it's a tree that somebody's planted, and it's supposed to be imbued with the spirit of whatever god it is that they're worshiping. So, but he tells him to take his bull, take his father's bull, and go up and tear those things down, and build an altar to the Lord your God on top of this rock in proper arrangement, and take the second bull and offer a sacrifice of the wooden image which you cut down. Now, why do you think he wants to do the second bull? It doesn't say, so it's just conjecture here. Why would God want the second bull? Usually he wants the first fruits, when you're talking about fruits, but why the second one? They're both of 7 years, but take the second bull of 7 years. What I came down to was, that's what God wants. That's enough for me. But I suspect it was the better of the two. That's probably why God wanted it. So Gideon took 10 men from among the servants and did as the Lord said to him. But because he feared his father's household and the men of the city too much to do it by day, he did it by night. Now, I don't know about you, but when you sacrifice something up on a hill and you burn a bull, people are going to see it. So, and when the men of the city arose early in morning, there was the altar of Baal torn down, and the wooden image was beside it and cut down, and the second bull is being offered on the altar, so they said to one another, who has done this thing? And when they had inquired and asked, they said, Gideon, the son of Joash, has done this thing. Somebody knew who did it. So the men of the city said to Joash, bring out your son that he may die, because he has torn down the altar of Baal, and because he has cut down the wooden image that was beside it. But Joash, now you remember I told you this is going to be the story of Joash? Joash is my dad, so I really, really relate to this story, because that was Joash's altar, that was Joash's bull. Now, I don't know about you, but if my dad had a $1,200 bull, and I took it and sacrificed it, he'd be pretty mad at me. But he would also do this. But Joash said to those who stood against him, would you plead for Baal? Would you save him? Let the one who would plead for him be put to death by morning. If he is a god, let him plead for himself, because his altar has been torn down. So you're going to see in the next verse that he changes Gideon's name to Jerubbaal. I have a story real quick about my dad. When I used to do heating and air, they had an air conditioner that needed to be installed over at Mod Carpenter. So I went over to Mod Carpenter, I installed it real quick, I did it properly and everything, but I didn't get any kind of a license or whatever you need to get that installed. So I just did the work and left. And just so happened that like 2 days later, a city inspector came in. And where does he go? He goes right up to that air conditioner, looks at it, and he says, "Who installed this air conditioner?" And my dad said, "Get off this property." You know, he was, because he knew I'd get in trouble for installing that without a license or anything, without a permit. So anyway, he got off the property and went back and complained to his boss, and his boss said, "Look, they get volunteer work all the time. If somebody volunteered to install that air conditioner, leave them alone." So my dad did that for me. I don't know how many times. How many other people here had dads that would move the earth to save their son? I don't. Yeah, we know that you would be lying. So,
My dad's always
yeah. Do you have any specific story that you can think of? I know that's. Yeah. Well, that's what dads do, though. Dads, you know, they might be tough. They might be, you know, spank you or whatever, or, you know, not that we spank anybody, but they might do stuff that you don't like, but they really care. They really do. At least mine did. Therefore, on that day, he called him Jerubbaal, saying, "Let Baal plead against him." And that's what it means, is let Baal plead. I looked it up in Strong's, and it said Baal will contend. Well, kind of the same thing. Let Baal plead, or let Baal contend for his own problems. So now, but the Spirit of the Lord came upon Gideon, and he blew his trumpet, and the Abiezrites gathered behind him. And he sent messengers throughout all of Manasseh, and gathered behind him, and sent messengers to Asher, Zebulun, Naphtali, and they came to meet him. So Gideon said to God, "If you will save Israel by my hand, as you have said, look, I will put a fleece on the ground." Now we know this story, right? He puts a fleece on the ground. He asks that the fleece be soaking wet, but the ground around it be dry. And that is exactly what happened. So then he says, "Well, yeah, but one more test, God, one more test. Let me put this fleece back on the ground again, but this time make the fleece dry, and the ground around it soaking wet." And so that's exactly what happened. And God did so that night, and it was dry on the fleece only, but the dew on the ground. That's in verse 40. Now we're finally in chapter 7, where we're going to start getting into the actual battles and everything. Then Jerubbaal, that is Gideon, and all the people who were with him rose early and encamped beside the well of Herod, so that the camp of the Midianites was on the north side of them, by the hill Morah in the valley. Now that's that valley, that Jezreel Valley down here. I could not find where this mount that he was at, anyway, I can't remember the name, but they were up in the hills, up on the mountains, but all of Midian was down in that valley, down below them. And the Lord God said to Gideon, "The people who are with you are too many." So what did he do? Yep. First thing he did, though, was he said, "Hey, just tell the ones who are afraid to get out of here," right? So they went from 30,000 to 10,000, 20,000 people left. But now, why would God do this? Why would God say that the people are too many?
Gideon is having trust issues with God's call, and God was whittling down the army so that he wouldn't just have trust in mankind.
Yeah.
And he had to.
Yes. Yeah. He wanted to make sure that Gideon and all those around him understood that this was God that did it and not them. So, down in verse 9 of chapter 7, and it happened on the same night that the Lord said to him, arise and go down against the camp. He's still, like you said, he's still having trust issues here. He's not certain about what's going on. But if you are afraid, go down to the camp with Purah, your servant, and you shall hear what they say. And afterwards your hand shall be strengthened, and you shall go down against the camp. And then he went down with Purah, his servant, and to the outpost where the armed men were in the camp. Now the Midianites and the Amalekites and all the people of the east were lying in the valley as numerous as locusts, and their camels were without number as the sand of the seashore. And later on we'll find out it's like 120,000 people that are there. And when Gideon had come, there was a man telling a dream, and his companion, he said, I have a dream. That sounds familiar. To my surprise, the loaf of barley bread tumbled into the camp of Midian, and it came to a tent, and it struck it so that it fell over and turned, and the tent collapsed. And then his companion answered and said, this is nothing else but the sword of Gideon, the son of Joash, a man of Israel. Into his hand God has delivered Midian and the whole camp. And so Gideon takes that interpretation. He understands now that no matter what, I'm going to win. These people are already scared of us. I don't think they know that there's only 300. But that's what the number was after it got whittled down. You mentioned that they got down. They had 30,000, whittled it down to 10,000, still too much. Then they whittled it down and more because he said, take them to the water. If they lap it up like a dog, then they're out. If they get down on their knees, they're out. The only ones I want left are the ones that stand, cup the water in their hand, and take a drink. So, and then he divided the 300 men into 3 companies, and he put a trumpet into every man's hand with empty pitchers and torches inside the pitchers. Do we have any science teachers here? What would happen if you put a torch inside a pitcher? Yeah, the air would run out, it would go out. I personally think this is a miracle because they did not go out. Let's see. Oh, they were on Mount Gilead. That was what it was. It took me a while to find it on maps, and I did. Mount Gilead is between Columbus, Ohio, and Cleveland, Ohio. So, but actually, this is the Jezreel Valley, and this is as close as I get. This says it's Mount Gilboa, but I think that Mount Gilboa and Mount Gilead are the same thing. So they're up here on the mountain. Everybody else is down below them in the Jezreel Valley. So Gideon and the 100 who were with him came to the outpost. Like I said, he split his 300 men into 3 groups, and they went and they surrounded these Midianites. They were here in the Jezreel Valley, and then when they realized what was going on, they headed over here towards Oprah, but Gideon surrounded him with 3 companies of men right there. And what they did was they held up their torches, they broke their pitchers, and then they blew on their horn. And when the 300 men blew, this is in verse 22 of chapter 7, when they blew on the horns of the trumpets, and the Lord set every man's sword against his company throughout the whole company, and the army fled to Beth Acacia toward Zerah, as far as the border of Meholah and Tabbath. So they head south, what's left. Now there was like 120,000 men. They're running away. What had happened was every time that they would blow their horn, the men of this army would attack each other. So they killed themselves, and the ones that were left fled. The other men of Israel gathered together from Naphtali to Asher, Manasseh, and pursued the Midianites. And Gideon sent messengers throughout all the mountains of Ephraim, saying, come against the Midianites and seize from the watering places as far as Beth-barah and the Jordan. So the Ephraim is here, and he sends messengers to them and says, every watering hole between here and here, I want you to stop them from getting to it. So you have this army, and they don't have access to any water. And they captured 2 princes of the Midianites, Oreb and Zeb. They end up killing them. Now we're in chapter 8. Now the men of Ephraim said to him, why have you done this to us? Why did you not call us when you went to fight the Midianites? And they reprimanded him sharply. And then he said to them, what have I done now in comparison with you? He's really laying it on pretty thick here. Is not the gleaning of grapes of Ephraim better than the vintage of Abiezer? Now, he is from the tribe or the clan of Abiezer. So he's saying, aren't your grapes better than mine? God has delivered into your hands the princes of Midian, Oreb and Zeb, and what was I able to do in comparison with you? So he's letting them know, look, I may have fought all these people, but what you do is far better than what I do. Then the anger toward him subsided when he said that. And when Gideon came to the Jordan, and he and his 300 men, and they crossed over exhausted and still in pursuit, then he said to them, men of Succoth, please give us loaves of bread, and the people who follow me, for they are exhausted. I am pursuing. And the leaders of Succoth said, are the hands of Zebah and Zalmunna, those are 2 of the kings of Midian, are they not now in your hand? And we should give bread away to your army? So Gideon said, for this cause the Lord will deliver Zebah and Zalmunna into my hand, and I will tear the flesh from your thorns of the wilderness and with the briars. And he went from there, he went to Penuel and spoke to them, and the same thing happened there. They wouldn't give him bread. So he told them, men of Gil, when I come back in peace, I will tear down this tower. Now, Zebah and Zalmunna were at Kakor, is here. They had crossed the Jordan River, they had gone down to Kakor, and that's where these 2 kings are with what's left of their army now. And Zebah, they were at Kakor, their armies about 15,000, all who were left of the army and the people of the east, for 120,000 men who had drew swords had fallen. So they fought with each other. So they killed themselves all off. And then Gideon went up by the road, and those who dwell on the tents on the east of Nobah and Jogbaha, and he attacked the army while the camp felt secure. So he and his 300 men, and they keep saying 300 men. So at this point in time, none of his men have been killed. Everything is done by the hand of the army, the other army themselves. And when Zebah and Zalmunna fled, he pursued them, and he took the 2 kings of Midian, Zebah and Zalmunna, and routed the whole army. And then Gideon, the son of Joash, returned from battle from the ancient of Heres, from the ascent of Heres, and he caught a young man from the men of Succoth and interrogated him. And he wrote down for him the leaders of Succoth and its elders, 70 men. Why would he need to do that? Why would he need to know who's in charge of Succoth? Yeah. And that's exactly, he said, I'm going to come back here and I'm going to take your men out to the briars, out to the thorns. And so he needed to know who they were. Then he came to Succoth and said, here is Zebah and Zalmunna, about whom you ridiculed me. Are the hands of Zebah and Zalmunna now in your hands, that we should give bread to your weary men? And he took the elders of the city and thorns of the wilderness and briars, and with them he taught the men of Succoth. So I don't know what it would be like if somebody took me out in the middle of the Mojave Desert and just released me, but that's the picture I get, is he He took them out there in the worst area that he could drop them off and just left them there. And then he tore down the tower of Peniel and killed the men of the city. Who do you think fared better here? The men of Succoth or the men that got killed? At least the men of Succoth, they can come back to town and lick their wounds. So, and he said to Zebah and Zalmunna, what kind of men were they that you killed at Tabor? And they answered, as you are. So were each one resembled the son of a king. And then he said, they were my brothers, son of my mother. As the Lord lives, if you had let them live, I would not kill you. And he said to Jether and his firstborn, rise and kill them. But the youth would not draw his sword. Now, I can see the same thing happening with me. If I was in battle and told my young son, you go out and you kill these two kings, even though they're captured, probably tied up, the kid didn't want to do it. So Zebah and Zalmunna said, rise yourself and kill us, for as a man, so is his strength. So Gideon arose and killed Zebah and Zalmunna and took the crescent ornaments that were on their camels' necks. Now that's something that I thought was interesting. Crescent ornaments. Still today. If you go to Red Cross to get help, over there it's not Red Cross, it's the Red Crescent. The crescent over there is still a big deal. So for years it's been that way. Okay, then the men of Israel said to Gideon, rule over us, and you and your son and your grandson also, for they have delivered us from the hand of Midian. But Gideon said to them, I will not rule over you, nor shall my son rule over you. The Lord shall rule over you. Then Gideon said to them, I would like to make a request of you, that each one of you give me the earrings of his plunder, for they had gold earrings because they were Ishmaelites. And they answered, we will gladly give them. And they spread out a garment, and each one threw his earrings into the plunder, from his plunder. Now the weight of the gold earrings was about 1,700 shekels. I'm trying to... Okay, a shekel is about half an ounce. Now you think about how much the price of gold is today per ounce. It equals about 42.5 pounds of gold that he got with 1,700 shekels. So today that worth would be over $2 million. It's a lot of gold. He also got the crescent ornaments, there again, crescent ornaments, pendants, and purple robes, which were the kings of Midian, and besides the chains that were around the camels' necks. Doesn't say anything about the chains, doesn't say they were gold, so I did not include them in on the value of the gold. Then Gideon made it into an ephod. Now, that is an ephod. Now, you've got 42 pounds of gold, just that thing that he's wearing there. He's got 42 pounds of gold and those stones, and made it into an ephod. I don't know if he used all that gold. That's a lot of gold. Thus Midian was subdued and before the children of Israel, and they lifted their head no more, and the country was quiet for 40 years in the days of Gideon. Gideon had 70 sons who were his own offspring, for he had many wives, and his concubine, who was in Shechem, also bore him a son. His name was Abimelech. And Gideon, the son of Joash, died at a good old age and was buried in the tomb of Joash his father. Okay, and at that, I think we'll stop. I was going to continue on to who Abimelech was, but Abimelech, his son, Gideon had said, I am not going to rule over you. The Lord's going to rule over you. Neither me nor my son is going to rule over you. But you'll find out that Abimelech, if you read on to chapter 9, Abimelech did go ahead and rule over them. Not the whole country of Israel. You know, the first king of the combined Israel was Saul. So this is just a king over that area. But he killed all 70 of his half brothers, because he was born of a concubine. But he killed all 70 of them, took over, and then eventually the men of the city of Oprah and Manasseh went against him and basically kicked him out of power. So we won't get into that, though. We're out of time. Thanks a lot. I've always liked the story of Gideon, but never realized how much it actually is fitting for me as far as it goes with my dad. So for me, from now on, it's going to be the story of Joash.